Good morning, you guys. So, as you can see, um, my littlest one is asleep. My biggest one is over here on my right. He's asleep too. They are both out like a light, so I figured now is as good a time as any to film. Um, my background right now kind of stinks because back there you can see the lovely water spot we have up there from once when the tub overflowed upstairs. And over here we have some of my son's fine artwork that he has so graciously displayed upon our walls. So, excuse the background. Anyway, I did promise you guys in the last video that I would get into a labor and delivery story in another video, so while I have peace and quiet, I figured I might as well do that. Ideally, I would like to be a little bit more put together than this for as lengthy as I'm sure this is probably going to get, but we don't really have time for that nowadays, so let me start from the beginning. Like I said in my last video, this little fella was due on the 16th of May, 2017, and my water broke at around 10:30 on May 4th. 10:30 at night, May 4th. I had just gotten to bed. Everyone was just getting settled in. My husband, poor thing, had been working all day, and he was exhausted, and he had just gotten to sleep. And I was laying there watching YouTube, and I felt this pop. It was the weirdest feeling ever. Like, it felt like a kick, but stronger, and like something literally broke in my belly. And I had remembered people saying that that's what that felt like. Now, bear in mind, I know what having my water break feels like, sort of, but the first time around, it did not break before the contractions started. With my oldest, I was probably, between 4 and 6 hours into labor by the time my water finally broke, and my water was low with him. So it wasn't like this huge gush, and I didn't feel this big pop. I just felt like this sudden trickle that let me know that something was definitely different the first time around, but it wasn't this, oh my gosh, like I'm gushing water now. This time around, it didn't quite start that way. It was that pop, and then I felt a little trickle, and then when I got up and tried to hurry to the bathroom, it just started flowing, and it would not stop. Like, it would go in little intermissions, like as he would move, more would come out, or as I would move, more would come out, and I'm like, it was so hilarious. I kind of wish that I would have started filming at that point, because like there was just me in my husband's t-shirt waddling around the house with no pants on, with a towel stuffed between my legs. And I don't mean a little dish towel, I mean like a big bath towel. And that thing got soaked. I mean, it got soaked. And so from there I called the midwife, and she asked if there were any contractions with it or anything like that. At this point, there weren't any beyond what I was used to experiencing, which was mainly just Braxton Hicks and a lot of pressure. So nothing that really screamed labor. But she did have me come in right away because I was GBS positive, as I believe I talked about in my in the last pregnancy vlog that I did. So when you're GBS positive, they like you to deliver as quickly as possible after your water breaks, like no later than 24 hours. And if it goes to 24 hours or over, they would admit you to the hospital, probably start Pitocin. If the Pitocin doesn't work, then they would have to do a C-section, probably within a couple of hours, because there's just too much risk of, once that water breaks, there's nothing keeping that bacteria away from the baby anymore. And they don't like him exposed to it for very long. So they were very clear about the fact that they wanted me to deliver fairly quick. And I was fine with that, but in a way I felt like they were being just a tad bit pushy, because my contractions finally did start and they were starting to feel like more painful and intense. Probably, I would say around 3, 3:30 in the morning. But she had me come into the birth center right away, and it was about an hour drive from where I'm at to where the birth center is. So the whole way there, I'm feeling pressure. I'm feeling some Braxton Hicks, but nothing terribly painful. I mean, I could still kind of talk and laugh and joke through the contractions at that point. And they weren't coming regularly. They weren't coming very close together. Um, it was still very manageable at that point, as I was sitting on a stack of towels and blankets, trying not to get my amniotic fluid all over my mom's truck seat. Um, and so we got there, I want to say, close to 1 in the morning. No, because water broke at 10:30. Took us about a half an hour to round everything and everyone up. It was me, my husband, my mom, and my oldest son. And we had to, of course, get the bags in the car. And my mom was like absolutely anal retentive about being like cleanly in her truck while my water was leaking everywhere. So she's like patting the seat down thoroughly with, like I said, towels and blankets, trying to make sure that I don't get anything anywhere, which I didn't. So thankful for that. But anyway, so we got there, I guess, yeah, it must have been around 12:30ish, and they took me right up to one of the labor and delivery rooms, um, and pretty much they started my IV almost immediately, and they gave me ampicillin. And mind you, I have never had an allergic reaction to anything beyond like sneezing when there's dust, and especially not to any kind of a penicillin product, because I have taken penicillin, I've taken amoxicillin, I've taken stuff in the Cillin family since I was like 8, 9 years old. Never had a problem. They gave me ampicillin, and first they gave it to me in a weird place. Like, if you've ever had a baby, they give you something called a Heplock or a Hepperlock, which is an IV in your hand, on the back of your hand, instead of like otherwise when they would do it in your arm. But they did it on the back of my wrist, and that one didn't work, so they had to take that out, and I'm still bruised from that, and my son is now 9 days old. So they had to put it in my hand, and then within about 2 minutes, I started noticing this funny taste in my mouth. And if you've ever had like a CAT scan or an MRI or anything like that, and you've had that dye injected into your blood that like makes your whole body feel like really, really warm, and like your mouth gets this metallic taste in it, that's what that was like. And I asked the nurse, I said, "Is this normal? This funny taste in my mouth?" She's like, "Yeah, some people get that. Some people notice it, some people don't." And then right after that, I started noticing like my gums had this tingly feeling in them, which sounds really weird. It felt like I was like chewing on pins and needles. And then it went from there to my chest. And it just felt like there were like pins and needles poking inside my lungs. I couldn't stop coughing. My whole body was hot. My nose stopped up. I instantly sounded like I was sick with a cold or a sinus infection or something. And the nurse is just like looking at me, and she real quick goes and gets me some Benadryl and some kind of an antacid or something like that, and gets me to take that, and disconnects the IV right away and says, "No more penicillin products for you. You are absolutely allergic. That was your first allergic reaction to a penicillin product." So they discontinued that, and I asked, "So is there another type of antibiotic that you can give me?" And long story short, I got a few different answers from a few different nurses and midwives there, which was kind of confusing. Um, but basically, they said, you almost completely finished this dose, so we're not going to give you any more right now. We're going to let your body kind of recover from that reaction, and we're going to look into and see what kind of other antibiotics would work. Now they also, another one that they were going to try with me was possibly vancomycin, or what was the other one? I don't know. There was vancomycin and another one that they could have tried, but they said those are honestly really strong. They can have some really nasty effects on you, and we don't want to do that to you at this point. Let's just see how fast you deliver. And, with you having such a strong reaction to just a penicillin product, you could have a much worse one to these other stronger antibiotics. So, that being said, I didn't want to go that route. So, eventually I had them just disconnect the IV altogether because it was really hurting my hand. And from there, I just, they didn't really bring it up anymore. But they did continuously, by about 5 o'clock in the morning, they were concerned because at that point, my water broke at 10:30. It was then 5, so it had been like 7.5 hours. And they were starting to get concerned because my contractions still weren't necessarily regular. They were definitely painful by that point. But I was still kind of up and moving around, and it just wasn't looking like it was that intense active labor that they wanted to see. So they tried getting me to drink this nasty thing called a labor cocktail. Well, I can't really say that it's nasty, but it just sounded nasty. The stuff that they told me was in it. Apricot juice, castor oil, lemon verbena, and what's this other stuff? Some kind of nut butter that they were going to put in it. And basically what that was supposed to do was stimulate my bowels so that it would just kind of agitate everything in there and get me to contract more. And I'm just like, I'm already in enough pain. I'm exhausted. I didn't get to sleep last night. Yeah, I don't want to do that. And so I brought up the subject of nipple stimulation for helping to bring on stronger contractions. So if you don't know, nipple stimulation does stimulate contractions because it releases the hormone oxytocin in your brain, which is the natural hormone that induces you into labor when your body and your baby are good and ready. And it is what they try to mimic by giving women Pitocin in the hospitals to induce labor. So I brought that up and they said, yeah, you can absolutely try that. Basically, you're going to stimulate for as long as it takes until you get a contraction, stop during the contraction, and as soon as the contraction's over... Oh. Look at your grumpy face. And as soon as the contraction is over, then you're going to go ahead and start up the stimulation again. Little grumpy face. So that is what I did. Honestly, I didn't follow that to a T because really, at first I was trying to just catch my breath. Like, I don't know many people that can just handle contraction after contraction after contraction, hammering them very well. And I knew that point was coming anyway, because you get to a certain point in labor where that is what your body is going to do. And you're not going to have a say in the matter. So while I still had a say in the matter, I gave myself at least a minute or so between when the contraction ended and when I would start nipple stimulation again. Of course, I didn't tell them that. But I did a lot of that in the shower. I was in and out of the shower a lot, which I really loved because the shower did definitely help me to relax and unwind and just breathe through a lot of it. Um, my husband slept quite a bit while I was in the early stages of labor, which was fine because it wasn't like I said, it wasn't excruciating yet. It wasn't active labor necessarily yet. So I just kind of let him sleep. And then by, I'd say about 6, between 6 and 7 in the morning, um, I was definitely in that place where I really couldn't talk through the contractions. I had to breathe through them, um, kind of just groaning through them at certain points. And by that time, my husband got up. He knew it was like, okay, we're getting closer. But by this time, I was still hours and hours and hours away from delivering. And so he's up and he's in the bathroom with me and he's like holding my hand and trying to help me breathe through everything and just generally being as supportive as he could. And the midwife was a bit more involved now because my contractions were coming 2 to 5 minutes apart. And then, of course, within the next hour or two, they got to about a minute or two apart. Yes, you're awake now, huh? Just looking all around. So, like I said, it got very intense. Once we hit that 7 o'clock in the morning mark, things sped up. And I was in that active phase for what felt like forever. I tried laying down and just resting through it, and it got to a point where I couldn't do that anymore. They had a nice jacuzzi tub, which helped some at first, but the stronger the contractions got, I found that being in the water actually made things feel worse and more painful. Not so much the shower, but actually being submerged in the water because, like, I mean, for anybody that's ever been in a relatively decent amount of water, like a really deep tub or a pool or anything, you know the kind of pressure that water puts on your body. And it kind of pushes everything in and up. So while you're having a contraction, your body's trying to push your baby down, and the water is like pushing in and up. So it's like this counteractive pressure that just, to me, felt horrible. And I did not want to be in there anymore. And it was just hot, and then it got to the point where I was going from hot to cold, hot to cold, hot to cold, and I just could not get comfortable. Sweating 1 second and shivering the next. And it got to the point where I was like, I don't want any clothes on. I don't care who sees me. I don't care what's hanging out. I really don't. And that's basically just how I walked around. And I went from the bed to the tub, from the bed to the tub. And, there was nobody up there at that time except for me, my husband, and the midwife. So I really didn't care how I was walking around. I did have like a towel around me to keep me warm in between the bath and the bed. But other than that. So then she kept checking me, and probably around 1 or 2 o'clock, I want to say, I got to the point where I started feeling like somewhat of an urge to push. So I started. And, she checked me after several pushes, and she was like, "You're almost there. You're at about an 8.5." And I was just like, oh God. Just 1.5 more centimeters. Was it 1.5 or 2.5? 1.5, I think. I'm bad at math and I'm tired. Don't quote me. Anyway. So at that point she's just like, I'd really like for you to stop pushing right now, because if you push at this point with that little bit of cervix left there, you can cause some inflammation all around your cervix, and it can actually swell up and make it harder for you to push later. And I'm just like, oh God, no. So she encouraged me to try to get back in the tub so I could relax a little bit more. And I tried it, and my husband got in there with me. And he was like reclined behind me. I was laying back on him. And from what he tells me, I slept for about a good half an hour. Now, I don't remember having much of a perception of time. I wasn't looking at the clock. I was not even anywhere near my phone. As a matter of fact, my phone had died and we had forgotten the charger. And it was just. I remember not really thinking so much, but just I was very aware of when the contractions would hit. And he would do everything he could, but it got to a certain point where it was just like nothing that anyone did for me could possibly make me feel any better at that point. And I felt so bad for him because I know a few times I probably sounded like I was yelling at him. I wasn't so much yelling at him as I was yelling at the pain, but I was trying to answer him. Because he would like try to get me to squeeze his hand, and sometimes that helped, and then other times it was just like, no, I don't want to squeeze your hand. I don't want anyone touching me. And but that stage didn't come till much later. Up until that point, I was grateful for it. I had it, both him and the midwife would take turns rubbing my back and just helping me breathe through it. And a big part of the labor I just cried through. Like once I got into active labor and I was exhausted, I was hungry, I was thirsty, I was nauseous, I was just everything all at once. And I felt so overwhelmed and just tired. And all I could do was just lean over on the birthing ball, rest my head on my husband's shoulder, and just sob. And I don't think he he knew what was wrong, obviously, but it was just like, I'm not a crier. And for him to see me like that was just like, he didn't quite know what to do. Because especially over physical pain, I just don't, I just grit my teeth and bear it for the most part. And I had up until that point, and it just got so intense. That was all I could do was just cry. There was nothing else that I could do to explain what I was feeling. And then we got to the pushing phase. After that last stint in the tub when I was 8.5 centimeters, after that half hour or so, I was just like, I have to push. I have to. And I kept complaining about how hot I was in the tub, and the water really wasn't that hot, but it was like, how when you run a bath, even if it's just like lukewarm, it's very humid in the bathroom, and that humidity makes it feel hot and sticky. And that was just all I could focus on. It's just too hot. It's too hot in here. So they got me up and helped me back to the room, and I got on that bed and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. And what I really loved about this was she wasn't like coaching me through the pushing. She was like, when your body tells you you have to, then just do it. Don't try to force it. When the contraction stops, stop pushing. And she just let me do my own thing, which I loved, because that was one thing that really got on my nerves in the hospital, was them, okay, ready, 1, 2, 3, push, and then they'd count for 10 seconds. Like, what if I'm not done pushing after 10 seconds? What if I'm done before 10 seconds? Like, I didn't like that. But I will get to the delivery part of this. I'm going to have to make this a part 2 video, because little one here now has a number 2, and I need to go take care of that. But I will put part 2 of this video up soon. Hang in there.